No mercy.
All right, welcome to the Gunner Technology Livestream, a weekly tech talk for non-techies and techies alike. I'm your host, Darren Merkins. With me is CEO of Gunner Technology, Cody Swan. What's up, Cody?
Oh, I am excited for this series because I am just like, I love hot button issues, and that's what we're going to be talking about in depth.
Non-stop hot button issues. This is actually the first episode of the new Tex Ethics series.
Yeah.
I like that name because it's impossible to say. But we've got at least 18 episodes lined up. We might throw some more in as we get more guests or we get more recommendations from viewers. If you guys have a topic that you want us to touch on, definitely let us know on our Facebook page or on Twitter. And we'll definitely get to everything that we possibly can about the ethical conundrums surrounding technology.
Yeah,
because there's plenty.
We should post a schedule too. If anyone wants to join us, feel free to do so. This isn't going to be like one of those shows where we shout at each other. We're definitely going to have some guests that are kind of opinionated on one end of the topic or the other. And when we have a guest, I'll try to take the other side of there's usually multiple sides, but I'll try to take another side to present another viewpoint. But I'm going to try to play this as objectively as possible and be kind of like the oracle of truth in all of this. We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah,
but that's my goal.
It's a noble goal. We'll see how well it does. A little bit of poise and sensibility is needed in these sorts of debates. So, although it'd be good content if we got into like a huge screaming match.
So that brings us to the topic of the day.
Yeah, I was going to say, that leads right in. But before we get there, actually, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping here. So we've got our Country Store giveaway. Country Store is a lifestyle brand for anyone who loves the outdoors. You can visit them at countrystoreoutfitters.com and sign up for the giveaway on our Facebook page. The winner this week is Christopher W. from New York, from the Big Apple. So, Chris, you've got a Country Store hat heading your way, along with copies of our ebooks. And anyone who didn't win this week can sign up on our Facebook page. And while you're on our Facebook page, you can answer our question of the week, which this past week was, did you watch the Game of Thrones Season 8 finale? And shockingly, we got a bunch of yays, which was an important term used in the episode itself when friggin' Bran was elected Lord of the, I guess, Six Kingdoms now?
Yeah, the Six
Kingdoms, right? What a dumpster. But most people said no. Most people didn't watch it. So good for them.
It's one of those things, I think, where it's like the liberal left. Like people who are involved in it think that everyone else must have done the same thing, kind of thing. Like, how
I guess realistically it was only how many millions of people watched it?
5 million, 8 million?
Something like that. So I guess it wasn't really everyone in the world was watching it. It just felt that way.
Yeah, totally. Just, yeah, exactly. And it was funny because I saw something where HBO is running a documentary on the final season just to milk the last few dollars out of this thing.
Just to dig the knife in a little bit further, just to see what a mess it was behind the scenes.
And I didn't watch the documentary. I saw a write-up about it because it was like the Night King's origins or motivation gets an explanation. And I guess like one of the writers on the show was like, yeah, I guess he's kind of angry because he didn't want to be the Night King and the children made him the Night King. So he's just angry. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So we have like the big bad is like an emo kid. Is that what it is?
Yeah, what the heck?
It was so, and I was like, I would have just been better off with no explanation than that explanation.
That is terrible. Now I kind of want to watch it though.
Oh, I'm going to watch the documentary based on that for sure. Oh, by the way, random recommendation. It's good so far. Is Catch-22 is on Hulu. They made a series out of it. One of my favorite books of all time. And so far, I'm 3 episodes in. And it's holding up. 3 episodes in, we're doing good. They've got Hugh Laurie in there and George Clooney and Kyle Chandler. It's a good cast.
Kyle Chandler.
Is
that the guy from Wolf of Wall Street? The FBI guy?
The coach from the TV series Friday Night Lights.
Friday Night Lights.
And
the guy from Wolf of Wall Street. The FBI.
Oh yeah, the FBI agent. You're right. I totally forgot about that. Which he is incredible.
He's fantastic. I've seen on the boat.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I guess we can sort of dive in. Oh, I need to say what next week's poll is. And next week's poll is actually related to this week's topic. So The question is, do you think fake news is still a major issue on Facebook? Yes or no? And we already have a couple votes streaming in on the yay side, but don't let that sway you.
Right.
If you think Facebook's fixes have actually done something, feel free to vote no. And I guess that sort of leads into the topic at hand, which today we're talking about fake news, the I would say epidemic of fake news. But
yeah, well, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Facebook implemented some policies. I don't know if this is a good place to start, but Facebook implemented policies after the election in 2016 or something, and supposedly they're actually having a decent effect. And the way their policies work is, as I understand it, the way it works is familiarity with the source that the news is coming from allows a user to denote whether the news is factual or not. And based on that score, it's either displayed or not displayed to certain users, or displayed or not displayed on people's walls. So I guess it sort of leads into the issue of fake news and how best to combat it. But I don't know if that's the right place to start.
Well,
I don't know where you were going to go.
I was going to say, let's take a step back and define what fake news is, because like we have the president of the United States, who kind of defines fake news as any unflattering news that doesn't paint him or the country in a good light. That's kind of his definition of fake news. Not
like
necessarily
the emperor has no clothes would be fake news.
Right, exactly. So, and also one of the things that the president does is take the example of Don McGahn, who was his White House counsel. He basically said, I want you to get rid of Robert Mueller, the special counsel. And so the press wrote that the press reported that Trump asked Don McGahn to fire the special counsel. Okay. And so Trump's like, fake news. I never used the word fire. So he's defining fake news as anything that like either is unflattering or gets anything wrong, not the actual meaning, but any little thing that he doesn't like that gets wrong. That's what he defines as fake news. At the other end, which I think what we're talking about is actual deliberately misleading or untrue news. I think that's what we're more talking about in this series.
Yeah, because I don't even know that we need to necessarily debate the legitimacy of claiming that a news story that maybe gets terminology wrong is fake news. If sort of the thrust of the story is accurate, then I don't know that would fall under fake news so much as not 100% accurate news. But right. I did think we wanted to talk about sort of the fake news that's been in the real news, I guess, which is a lot of social media sites are sort of peddling conspiracy sites. And there's actually, I went through a bunch of different studies. There was one study from the Knight Foundation that was really interesting, and it said that 80% of fake news tweets focused on just 24 outlets. And I guess these are sites like what was it, like the Gateway Pundit or something like that, and there's one called Zero Hedge,
the Daily Wire.
Yeah, so there's sites that sort of put out news that is like, I don't know that it's necessarily, most of it is fake, a lot of it's fake, or a lot of it is sort of pushing the boundaries of what could be considered truth. And so I think that the debate seems to be around the effect that this is having on public discourse and politics and sort of just the day-to-day reality of living in a democratic society.
Right. And I think what we're talking about is, I know I threw out the example before.
And take over for a second, because I got to throw this dog out real quick.
Oh, yeah. A couple examples. So like exactly what you're saying, where the fake news will obviously, what we're defining as fake news is intentionally manipulating or misrepresenting information in order to deceive. I think that's what we're saying is fake news. And the problem is a lot of these news outlets that disseminate fake news will blend it with true news or news. And that's where it kind of, anything that has a hint of a truth to it is more believable. So like, take, for example, that absurd story about Pizzagate, where like Hillary Clinton and the DNC were, running a child sex ring through a pizza store. pizza shop. Well, like they had photos of like Hillary Clinton going in and out of there frequently, and other people going in and out of there frequently. So they're like, well, you know, why else would someone be going into a pizza shop so often? And it actually could have been the same photo, just changed, or it could have been just someplace she goes to lunch to get food often. But they take this nugget of truth and they spin it into this wild tale. And again, this is an egregious example of Hillary Clinton running a sex ring. Kind of the same thing with anything, almost anything that comes out of Newsmax, which is the gay frog type stuff and how they're poisoning our water, or that, yeah, it's true. And they're like poisoning babies. But then we have more subtle fake news, which is what I was kind of talking about with Nancy Pelosi. And that's the big thing that's been.
Oh, yeah. So what was this? Because you mentioned it and I had no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. So this has been in the news recently. So this isn't the first time that someone's done this, but basically they took this video of Nancy Pelosi giving a speech and they subtly slowed it down to make it look like she's got a little bit of a speech impediment, a little bit, or at least what I would consider one. But they slow it down just enough to make her look like she's kind of like drunk and she sounds drunk. And the whole thing was like Pelosi is like giving a speech drunk kind of thing. That was the news. It turns out the video was doctored and Trump like retweeted it and it was shared among a lot of other of those news outlets that you mentioned. And this is what's caused a big ruckus. And it kind of brings us to the topic of the day because Facebook was like, we don't have a policy against doctored videos. We don't have a policy against that. Like if it infringes on copyright, we can take it down. This doesn't infringe on copyright, so we can't take it down. And people are up in arms. But the interesting thing is like my challenge to someone who would say this should be taken off of Facebook is write a policy that would block that video, but would allow parodies and other type of like humorous videos and things like that. And it's not really possible. And so the left gets all up in arms about this fake news, this drunk Nancy Pelosi. But the problem is it's really the people that are the problem. And
well, that's the thing. So like to me, the issue is how do you fix it? Because you can't fix stupid. And a lot of these studies say like the most effective way to combat fake news is media literacy and sort of general knowledge of the world. But like you can't force people to be media literate or to have general knowledge of the world. So and like it's largely it's not necessarily a tech problem because it's sort of always been here. It's always going to be here. But tech has wildly exacerbated the problem. So it seems like it's a tech problem that needs a tech solution.
Yeah, and the funny thing is piling on about that is we've talked about this at length before, is at the end of the day, media outlets are businesses, right? They have to make a profit or they go out of business. So there's this great tendency to want to ignore this stuff, but this is what people are talking about. So it was interesting because Biz Stone, is that the Twitter guy? Biz Stone tracked this Nancy Pelosi thing down and saw that the original video had only been viewed 300 times before the mainstream media was like, look what they did to doctor this video. And then it shot up to like 3 million or something like that. So it's interesting because if people would just ignore it, including the media, the problem would still be there, but it'd be a lot less. And really the problem comes in when like the president of the United States starts sharing it, because when the media starts sharing it and then the president of the United States starts sharing it, you almost can't ignore it if you're at all involved in the news of the day kind of thing.
That's why you just can't be involved in the news of the day.
Right.
There was I was trying to find her. There's a quote from old Justice Scalia on it was McConnell FEC. This is something that's always stuck in my mind. I'm trying to find the exact quote, but basically his point was we sort of live in a country founded upon the idea that people are smart enough to rationalize through arguments and to come to logical conclusions. And so if you sort of throw that out, you're sort of tearing out the roots of civic society in the sense that you can't trust people to make informed decisions. But I think as we're seeing, you can't trust people to make informed decisions.
Right, exactly. And by the way, it's funny because speaking of informed decisions, the people who wanted the Pelosi video blocked, we're basically asking Facebook, whom they don't trust, to make the decision. And again, the counter argument to what I said was the intent was not humorous. The intent was to defame Nancy Pelosi. However, the creator of the video, didn't say that. Like, everyone assumed that what it was, but good luck proving that was the intent of the video, because whoever created it, which God knows where it originally came from, would just say, oh, it was just a joke.
Right.
And then it's in the same category of every other funny video where you splice up clips of Donald Trump talking and George W. Bush and Barack Obama. It's in the same category. You can't prove its intent. And they want Facebook, again, whom they don't trust, to make that judgment call and try to figure out what the intent of the original poster was. And talk about giving Facebook power, which is basically saying, like, you decide the intent, and if you don't like the intent, block it.
Yeah, that's some 1984 stuff.
Right.
We want some central tech company controlling what news we see. But I mean, you mentioned trust, and to me, that's sort of the big issue, because I fake news is largely a symptom of the complete erosion of trust in sort of the stalwarts of I guess information and dissemination of news and stuff like that. So like nobody trusts the press anymore. There was something that said, I think on a scale of 1 to 5, I think it was something like for old media companies, it was like a low 2 for Republicans and like a mid 2 for Democrats. So even Democrats don't trust the press. There's no trust in government anymore. So nobody trusts what the government tells them. And I think largely it's interesting too, because I think the tech sphere has played a huge role in that. If you're talking about something like WikiLeaks that came along, and if somebody told you that the government was spying on you through your computer, through your like the built-in camera in your computer, you would have said, that's the fakest news I've ever heard in my entire life. And we actually, our boss at ESPN, put a piece of electrical tape over his camera on his monitor, and we thought he was nuts. And then, like, not even half a decade later, all this stuff comes out about the massive spying being done by the NSA, and they actually did have direct access to your computer's camera. So I think the erosion of trust is sort of what's directly led to the proliferation of fake news across all these social media sites, and it's sort of snowballing out of control at this point.
And it's weird because the mistrust starts with the government. Like, the government's never been trusted. Let's be honest.
Yeah, 100%.
It kind of spread to the press, and my completely unfounded opinion is that it's because the press, in order to satisfy the constraints of being a capitalistic function,
right,
turned way more to opinion and analysis than actually reporting the news. And I saw an interesting piece about this. It makes sense from a logic standpoint. Like, the New York Times, the Associated Press, Reuters, Bloomberg, to some respect, and even local newspapers, they send their reporters out in the field. And for the New York Times, that's to like Iraq and Afghanistan and New Zealand. They send them to these places, right?
Like, I forgot something happened in New Zealand.
So like, actual news reporting is expensive, really expensive. What's very cheap is putting some suit behind a desk and giving their opinion about what happens. They don't have to actually be there. All they have to do is read the story and then give their take. And if you look at the ratio to like news stories versus analysis and opinion, you have way more in opinion analysis. And I don't think people are smart enough in the general population to separate this is a news story versus this is an opinion and analysis story. And opinion and analysis, you can get news reporting wrong, but there's a framework in which to do it right. With news and analysis, you're by definition going to be wrong to some people.
Yeah.
So in the eyes of a lot of people, the amount of times you're wrong keeps going up, but the more opinion analysis you go up, and you can only be wrong so many times before people start losing trust in you.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of threads to pick up on there. I mean, I think the fact that news has to be so money focused now, money driven, is a direct consequence of the democratization of news itself, in terms of how many people are covering it who are sort of just like armchair reporters. So I mean, journalism, media at large is bleeding money right now, and the only way that they can stay financially viable and even fund the hard news that they do, as little as that may be at this point, is to flood the already overflowing waters of opinion and analysis with more opinion and analysis. And they can't stop. You can't really stop that train, because they would immediately lose all the money that they're the little money that they're still making.
Right. And the interesting thing is, again, like as we see with the government and the press, the more people learn about both, the more exposure people have to both, the less they trust them, which carries over to this fake news on the internet, because they're on Twitter and they see this, who, maybe it's a bot, maybe it's a person, but their handle's like, I love the USA, and they've got an American flag as their picture, and they're tweeting something about Hillary Clinton, molesting little kids, and they're like, yeah, why would this guy lie? He loves America. Look at his profile picture. It's like the less they know about something or someone, the more trust they put into it. Which on some angles it's weird, but on others it really makes a lot of sense, because the more you learn about something, the more awful you realize it is.
Yeah, two things there. One thing that's actually kind of an aside, and it's pretty interesting. One of the studies I read said that it did a study of fake news and fake news dissemination and who's really responsible for it. And basically it found that real people, actual users, are the ones who are having the most deleterious effect on news and real news coverage. And they're the ones who are spreading fake news more than anyone else, sharing it more than anyone else. And they basically said that bots are a problem, but not nearly the problem that people imagine that they are. And they don't have nearly the effect that actual real people do. And then in the response to the paper, you had a bunch of I guess scientists or data analysts coming in and saying, well, they don't know that. I mean, we think bots have a tremendous effect, and maybe it's just the fact that over the long term bots haven't had an effect, but recently they have had an effect, and all these other things. So in a study on fake news, you have scientists coming in and claiming that the study itself is fake news, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. And I guess sort of leads into my second point, which is that if you hear something that contradicts an opinion that you hold or something that you believe is true, you don't believe in that opinion less, you believe in it more. It's called the backfire effect, I think. So if you believe such and such fact or figure is accurate, and then you find out a piece of data, they've done studies too. So there's one where they've presented people with like two news articles. One that says, the first news article says, we did find weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. People read that, and then they say, oh no, wait, sorry, that was the wrong article. That was like a fake one that we came up with a different study. This is the real one. And it said, we didn't find any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which is the truth. That's the actual truth. People who believed the first article believed it more, believed that we had found weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So it's a conundrum. It's a pickle. I don't even know how you counteract it with better news, because as long as fake news is out there, that's what people are going to read to prop up their beliefs. And the real news that comes in that contradicts their beliefs is only going to make them believe their erroneous beliefs more.
You know what's funny is I saw an interesting case study on this, and the sample size was very small. It was like 6-7 people. So I mean, take it with a grain of salt. But it was so interesting because these were 7 people that they had total access to, like their Facebook and Twitter account. And basically they showed there was like a tipping point. Like all 7 of them kind of started middle of the road. They looked at the likes, like what they liked on Facebook and like retweeted on Twitter. And they kind of started middle of the road. Like they liked a Democratic governor, and they liked this person, and they retweeted this person. And they had some, on the right wing as well. And then all of a sudden they would like Fox News and a couple others, and it'd still be kind of like equal. And then you'd see they would like Ben Shapiro and like the Daily Wire, and there was some other one. And then all of a sudden it's like Newsmax right wing nationalism. It was crazy.
It's like gateway
again,
drugs. Like all of a sudden they're hooked on heroin.
Totally. It could very well be that they cherry picked 7 people. This is what is so hard about actually learning anything. Is this could be someone who's completely biased and picked 7 accounts that showed this trend, but each one of them was like, kind of middle of the road, and then it was like Fox News, okay, Ben Shapiro, okay, Daily Wire, and then it was like, and it was just like, it was really crazy. It was really crazy, and again,
over the cliff,
because exactly what you said is I think that people who are really trying to combat fake news are trying to do it with a hammer. Like they're trying to say, like once they see it, they attack the person who's disseminating the fake news. And exactly what you said, that makes them harden their belief even more, because they didn't just overnight get to that point. It was a slow indoctrination to that process. So it's going to be a slow unwinding to get them out of there. It's like, like you said, getting into heroin and then going to rehab and getting out of heroin.
Right. There's one interesting thing too there where you're talking about sort of like the cascade of, I guess it would be like ramping up conservatism, or like, because I guess you go farther and farther right as you go through these various sites, from Fox News to Daily Wire to, what is it, Newsmax? I don't even know if I've heard of Newsmax.
Newsmax is that's the thing that, what's his name, started. I'm actually really glad I can't remember his name.
So
the gay frogs guy.
Oh.
The guy on Joe Rogan.
I can't remember his name.
I'm actually
Alex
thrilled.
Jones. Is Alex Jones?
I was so happy that I couldn't remember his name, but
but there's an interesting side to this too, which is that fake news is sort of largely a conservative phenomenon. Not largely. I mean, I think it's 4 or 5 to 1, maybe more than that, a number of fake news stories. And fake news is determined by like Snopes. Snopes will say like, there's absolutely nothing true about that. So, and I guess it goes on both sides of the aisle. So there was one example where it was like, I guess there was a story that Donald Trump flew a private jet to save like a child who was starving or something like that. There's some ridiculous story, and they're like, there's absolutely nothing about this that's true. And then there was another story that like Trump's cousin died, and his dying words were like, I disown my cousin Donald Trump and I despise his presidency and everything about it. And like, not only does he not have a cousin, or like didn't have a cousin who lived anywhere near the town the guy lived in, but like everything about that story was true. And these are both shared like tens of thousands of times. So but the interesting thing I was going to say is that it does skew conservative, and I think largely that might just be because it skews, I'm not sure which it is, but it skews old too. Like the 65 and older are like 10 times more likely to share a fake news story, and they're like a smaller portion of the users on Facebook, but they're responsible for like half of the fake news that's shared. So, and that's probably a fake news stat that I just said.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and which is, by the way, I want to back up something before we get flamed to death. Like true conservatives, you were saying like these sites move further to the right. True conservatives will say, no, I'm very much to the right. And these news sites, they don't move further to the right. They move further to the absurd kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess like the spectrum is very.
We've created a new axis. We've created a new axis for the spectrum. There's like left, right, and then like downhill and uphill.
I mean, it really is. It's really like a circle. Like it's not like a bar. It's a circle. And like, there's like reasonable left to right on this half. And then like they both meet at the bottom in just absolute insanity.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what I'm talking about, like moving around the circle to a point where like you're believing that water is turning frogs gay or something, whatever he believes.
and I don't actually think there's anything inherent about the conservative viewpoint versus the liberal viewpoint that makes one more inherently right for fake news. It's what you were saying. It's the demographics.
That's what I think, because I mean, 65 and older skews heavily conservative. And I mean, that's just sort of like a natural life progression. Most people become more conservative as they get older. And for some reason, I don't know if it's like cognitive decline or what, like unfamiliarity with technology and social media, and maybe the idea that they actually do believe everything on the internet, where they weren't sort of raised on the internet and they realize that 99% of it is nonsense. I'm not sure what the reason is that the older generation shares fake news more often. But I think it's probably just a confluence of characteristics where they're both more conservative and more likely to believe stuff that they read online, and that's why it skews conservative. So yeah, so we don't get flamed. I think I'm not calling out conservatives. I guess I'm calling out old people.
I mean, I mean, honestly, you throw another demographic in there. And again, I say this term, I draw a big delineation between the two, between intelligence and education. Generally, it's the uneducated that also are spreading the fake news. If you look at the demographics, and again, if you look at, especially in the southern states, uneducated southern states go conservative. So again, when it comes to the fake news epidemic, as we've been calling it, it aligns with the demographics way more than the belief system kind of thing.
100%. And I think like that's one of the interesting, and I know Google's trying to do this, or at least on YouTube, there'd be like a little notification that such and such is from such and such news source. Here's like I don't know if they do like, here's a counter opinion, but the studies, one of the studies that I read, it was about like, online hoaxes in Indonesia. So I guess that's like a big thing in Indonesia, is that like fake news is rampant, and the government's like actively trying to crack down on it, because I guess it's probably dangerous if you spread fake news in Indonesia. Like that could really get out of hand fast.
But it's interesting.
But they said, I was going to say, like the what they found is that just Googling something that you read is the best way to counteract the effects of fake news, because just learning like a slightly bit more. And I guess like that's the answer to, if you learn more about something that you're invested in, if you learn more about something, if you read something that countervails your opinion, you feel that opinion more strongly. Like maybe you need to get people before it becomes a strongly held belief.
Yeah.
Like, and so maybe that's a technological solution that these companies could implement, wherein they try to educate people about fake news that they're reading before they go off the deep end and start believing in the fake news.
Well, and what's really interesting is like conservative politicians love this, right? They love this because it's benefiting them. Again, not so much because of the belief system that accompanies fake news, but because the demographics align with their politics, right? And so if you noticed what conservative politicians are doing now is they're saying, basically, we need to investigate Google. We need to investigate Twitter. We need to investigate Facebook because there's a conservative bias. So exactly what you said, like where Facebook's like, hey, here's a counter viewpoint. They're already introducing doubt ahead of time. So if that starts becoming prevalent, they're going to be like, yeah, of course Google's doing that. They're liberal shills. Like they're not dumb. Like they can see the writing on the wall. This is coming, and they're already introducing doubt into the Googles, the Twitters, the Facebooks. So that's not going to have any effect either.
So even that falls on its face.
Right. And it's interesting because like at the end of the day, like I'm a big anti-regulation person. So I think it's a huge mistake to get involved with like breaking up Facebook or regulating Twitter, regulating Google. But as you started out this program saying, if Facebook and Twitter and Google want to snuff this stuff out, treat it like spam. You know how exactly what you said, spam has a score. And once it reaches a certain score, it goes in your spam folder and you don't see it. So this is the whole thing where we talked about where before the internet, if some guy believed that the government was putting something in the water to create gay frogs, they could stay on the basketball court and say that to 6 people and everyone would be like, you're an idiot. And
it'd be like Mel Gibson in that movie Conspiracy Theory, sending out a spam for like 10 people.
Right, exactly. So, but it doesn't reach the hundreds of millions that.
Although I guess he turned out to be right in that movie. So maybe that's not the best example.
Perfect example. So, but with the internet, like you reach enough people, you're going to connect with people who believe your nonsense, and then it's going to kind of spread. So,
yeah, I mean that's tough too. Well, we actually have a question here, but before we get to that, I was going to say that's tough because maybe we can rope back around to this. But you're creating little pockets, like the very technology of social media is to create communities of like-minded individuals, and so you create these echo chambers by definition with these technologies that are using. But we actually had an interesting comment. It's an interesting tweet. It's kind of to the point, and the tweet reads, "What about actual fake news?" And then he just lists, or he or she lists, CNN, BuzzFeed, New York Times. So I mean, I guess. You're the journalism guy. So how do you respond to the assertion that, or I guess the evidence that actual news has proved to be not necessarily erroneous, but even like malicious at some points, putting out fake news stories that turn out to be wholly false. Like supposedly, well, go ahead.
I would say it's almost impossible for me to comment on a news outlet. That's not news. That's a news agency. The news agency creates news. So if there's, I won't even dive into the fact whether Fox News is fake news or Newsmax is fake news. I will take a specific example and say whether that's fake news or not.
Wasn't there like, well, to the tweet's point, didn't BuzzFeed release something that?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're
Mueller
about.
like responded to directly or something like that and said there's nothing accurate in this article.
Yeah, so BuzzFeed reported, according to it, and I hate the proliferation of anonymous sources. I understand them completely, but we've gotten a little bit out of control with the anonymous sources. BuzzFeed reported that anonymous sources within the Mueller team said that that Donald Trump asked Michael Cohen, his attorney at the time, to lie to Congress when he was testifying before Congress. Then not Mueller, because Mueller actually said nothing, not one word publicly during the 2-year investigation. The spokesperson for the team came out and said there is no truth to that report. So here's the thing. I'm not a huge fan of BuzzFeed, to be honest. They've gotten some things wrong. They've gotten some things right.
Yeah, I thought they were like a meme site, but now they're winning like Pulitzers and stuff.
Right. So
my head spin.
The thing to keep in mind here is, and sometimes I wish journalists wouldn't be. They have to be, because the minute you burn an anonymous source, no one will ever tell you something off the record again, ever. You're done. Your basically career's ruined if you out an anonymous source. So they can never do that. But it's very possible that an anonymous source did tell someone within BuzzFeed like that in order to hurt their credibility. You know what I mean? Like if you watch House of Cards, that stuff happens. Like politicians feed reporters bad information all the time. And now it used to be, and again, every news agency worth its salt will have a policy for using anonymous sources where the reporter will have to either get 2 sources to say the same thing. Could be off the record, but they have to get 2 sources to say the same thing. And the person's editor has to verify. They have to tell the editor who the sources are, and the editor then makes a decision on whether they can be used or not. That's a typical newsroom policy. I don't know if BuzzFeed does that. But yeah, that's a black eye when BuzzFeed does that. And again, we don't know if they were used or if they just they heard one thing and ran with it. But yeah, that's certainly a black eye. And
the clicks and the revenue and all the associated attention, I guess, with the news story. So I could see there being less, not like less thorough oversight, maybe more ready to run with seemingly wild stories, because I mean, that story was all over the place for weeks. And I guess there's no huge repercussions because nobody remembers it at all anymore. So why not just put stuff out there? But I guess it gets back to the trust issue. I would like to rope back onto the idea of echo chambers and how the technology itself is basically an echo chamber producer. And I don't know if there's a technological solution. I had while you were talking, I had an image in my head of, do you remember World War Z when they go to Israel, or they go to Jerusalem, I think, and they're talking about, I think he's talking to a rabbi or something like that, and the rabbi says like there's always a council of 12, but then like one of the 12 is, if it's a unanimous opinion, one of the 12 is forced to take the opposite opinion and argue with the other 11. It's something like that.
Right.
I wonder if like you could mandate that there has to be, like in a conservative subreddit, like 10% of the users have to be liberal or left leaning, and have to have their posts promoted somehow. Like how do you fight the echo chambers that produce a lot of the fake news and a lot of the polarization that we're seeing?
So I've actually got a pretty good solution for that. And the
turn off the internet.
Well, yes, but besides that, so Twitter does something called shadow banning, and again, I'll try to explain what that is. But like we talked about this idea that you brought up about a score, like a spam score, and if a user, like every post will have like a spam score, and if enough posts get marked to spam, then the account gets marked as spam, and so then Twitter does something called shadow banning, where you as the account don't know that you've been banned. It just looks like no one cares about what you're tweeting. Like you'll be tweeting and you'll be like, yeah, this is gonna be great. And then no one retweets it or likes or anything. And you don't know why.
That's why no one likes my tweets. It's because I'm shadow.
so as far as I know, Twitter's the only one that does that. I'm taking the opposite angle on this. What I'm doing, if I'm Twitter, if I'm Facebook, same thing. Every post has a spam score. And if enough posts get marked as spam, the account gets marked as spam. But I'm going to generate fake likes for their post. So they'll be like, yeah, woohoo. And then they're like, this is great. You know, they feel fantastic. They're not going to attack Twitter for like, oh, this is my conservative viewpoint. No, like you're just blocking me because I have a conservative viewpoint. Like, I think that's the way to go, is just generate fake likes for it. And they'll shout in their own house. They'll be so excited and they'll think they're just like changing the world, and they'll be doing nothing.
It's like the end of the South Park Yelp episode where they bring you to the office and tell them they're the most important person in town and throw confetti.
Exactly. So
and everyone thinks they are. I thought you were going to go like, if you get a spam score high enough, your tweet gets blasted to like everyone on Twitter. And so you just get a wall full of hatred and vitriol. Although that's probably exactly what they want. But I thought that might be a fun solution. Just make people feel horrible about their viewpoints. They're like horrible viewpoints.
You know what else is funny is like if there's such a group mentality to this, right? Like what else I've seen, and again, I can't quote any specific study, but like let's say Maggie Haberman is a reporter for the New York Times. And when she tweets, oh my gosh, the hate piles up on her, like fake news, blah, 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 blah. But, and I'm using Haberman as an example, but if then Maggie Haberman's like, hey, G.I. Joe 164, like, here's my phone number. Why don't you call me and we'll have a conversation? Like, they immediately kind of back down and drop off the hate and also kind of change their viewpoint, at least temporarily. But there's this whole gang mentality where it's just like the internet just welcomes, where it's like, let's attack this person because we don't know them. We're just
I guess it's the anonymity too.
Yeah,
in terms of people don't have to face the consequences of their actions, so they can just spam someone's wall with the most hideous, vile, and like nobody will know who's saying it. So I guess
that would be so funny is if Twitter did something where if your spam score hits high enough, it releases your public information.
That would be great. That's what I'm talking about. Like we need some sort of revolutionary change here. Like you have to hold people accountable.
Totally.
That would be great. So I guess I mean the solutions are hard to come by. And it's becoming like a bigger and bigger issue, and it's having like an actual effect on our politics, an actual effect on sort of like our day-to-day interactions with other human beings. I don't know. I mean, where do you see it going? What do you see it like? What's coming down the pipeline? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? What tools are out there? What's anyone going to do to sort of combat fake news? Because I can't even imagine what the next election cycle is going to bring.
Oh, well, I mean, here's an important first question, right? Like, again, I think that government involvement in capitalistic institutions is a nightmare. So I'm already ruling out like the government policing Twitter, Facebook, Google, and stuff like that. The real question is, do these companies want to get rid of this stuff? If it's profitable for them, they may not want to. So the real question is, first and foremost, do they want to? And if they do, I think we've brought up a good solution here, or at least the nexus of a good solution, which is the spam score. And you know what I would like to see is if I click on someone's account, I can see what their spam score was, and then it said here are some of their highest offending articles. So I could click and see a list of stuff that they shared that scored high on the spam scale. So like if if someone shares a link on Twitter and it's like, okay, this is like on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst spam, this is a 2, but this person has an 8. I can be like, what else has this person shared? And if they share the gay frog story, then which is a 10, then I'm probably not going to believe the 2 that they just tweeted out, because
I thought you were going to say you'd immediately believe everything else because the water is turning frogs gay.
But I think that would be a good step, is actually bringing that score to the public, so people can see what their spam score is and some of their most egregious shares, to kind of get a feeling for what this person is all about.
I mean, you're slowly drifting toward China's social score model.
Yeah, and then they can't get on the subway if they've scored.
Yeah, that's right. Send them to the gulag if their score gets high enough.
Yeah,
I mean, that would fix the problem overnight if there were actual real repercussions to idiocy on the internet.
Yeah, like you couldn't go to the bingo hall. That would really stop the blue hairs
immediately. It's tough. I guess sort of at the end of the day, you sort of are sort of butting up against against human nature. Like you said, I mean, this isn't new. It's just that it was localized before mass communication became available. And so I like with so many of these things, I mean, the obvious solution is to revert some of the technological decisions that we made over the past couple decades, I guess. But in lieu of reverting technological decisions, which obviously nobody's ever going to put the toothpaste back in the tube with any sort of technology, like all of these technological problems need technological solutions. So whether it's a spam score or automatically posting, I don't know, whether like a Snopes article or some sort of objective, and people hate Snopes, so they don't even think Snopes is objective. So some sort of something to give people the other side of the story before they, fall off the edge of sort of, I guess, like a reasonable suspicion of what they're reading, and then go full bore on, water turning frogs gay and other assorted conspiracy theories.
You know what else would be great that will never happen because everyone will throw it. Actually, it may happen. So imagine when you share something on Twitter or Facebook or Google or wherever you share it, because Facebook and Twitter and Google, they all wrap it in their own URL type thing. So imagine if what they did was when you clicked it, it stripped out all the branding from the article. So you didn't know if it was from the New York Times.
You didn't know if you strip out the source.
Yeah,
it's so funny that you'd strip out the source because people trust fake news and distrust real news.
Right, exactly.
I guess that's what we've come to.
So it strip out the source, and then again, what you were saying was that, and here's a counter article, but it would strip out the source from that as well.
Even better, put a fake source on, like a randomized source, so you get like water turning frogs gay is coming from the New York Times, or like, some sort of reasonable story. I don't like. GDP rose 5%, something bland coming from like Newsmax or some conspiracy site, and then see what people thought.
Yes, I love it. And then if you spend enough time on the article where they can tell you if you actually read it, then it's like, here's the real source.
Oh my gosh, that's the best solution I've heard. I think that has something like attached, like a recognizable name too, like I don't know, Anderson Cooper from CNN says Hillary Clinton's running a sex ring out of a pizza shop, and then see what people actually think. Like attach a news organization or someone that the person hates to an article or an idea that they would like, and see what happens. We got to make that happen. I think that's the best solution that's ever been come up with for this problem. And if you have any ideas about potential solutions to this problem or any opinions, tweet us your fake news, tweet us all your fake news. Hop on our Facebook page, let us know. Definitely keep the conversation going. And we've got a whole bunch of other ethical episodes coming up. Tech ethics episodes coming up. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts on this topic, or if we just want to wrap it up.
No, man, this is great.
There's going to be long episodes too, I guess we should say, because like these,
we may go overtime.
We've gone way overtime this time, but I think that's good because like there's so much to talk about with this stuff. I mean, it's just, and it's important stuff because we're sort of like at the precipice of tech taking over our lives completely, I think we're probably already there. That maybe happened like 5 years ago. So these are sort of discussions that need to be had. But that's going to do it for this inaugural episode, this first episode of the Text Ethics series. The blog post for this episode will be available at gunnertech.com, podcast on iTunes. You can check out our ebooks on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iBooks, Kobo, and anywhere else ebooks are sold. Hop on our Facebook page and enter our Country Store giveaway. Country Store is a lifestyle brand for anyone who loves the outdoors. You can visit them at countrystore.outfitters.com. And while you're on our Facebook page, answer our question of the week, which this week is, do you think fake news is still a major problem on Facebook? And I guess based on our discussion today and the votes we've already received, fake news is still a major problem on Facebook. So hop on our Facebook page, answer that question of the week, and make sure to tune in next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time for the next episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. I'm Derry, that's Cody. We'll see you next week.